Hey everybody, it's Alan with Diabolic Link, and today we are going to do a Bronco Slipstream installation. So I've unboxed everything. We've got everything sitting here on the two tables. I'll kind of do a quick review of the parts that you get with it, with the kit. This is your folding top. The two parts, one's larger than the other. The tail skin that fits into the tailgate groove and everything's closed. Your wall assembly, this is your center wall panel. These are the multi-bend brackets that will go in the rear corner holding the frame. An access panel spacer, large hinges, small hinges. We give you 36 to 40 carriage bolts, nuts, and washers. You will have extras left over. We do that in case you drop some, so in case you lose them, you're not, missing a few. These are the corners that will go, the final piece going in to fill in the gaps for when you're running a hardtop. Over here, this is the soft top mounting brackets to the body tub. This mounts to the soft top mechanism. We're doing a hardtop installation here. We'll add in the soft top parts as we get to them. These are the hardtop brackets. These are your wing walls, your vertical frame, your horizontal frame, your lower cross wall, that where you've got the rise in the floor between the floor and the seats. This takes up that gap. This is your access panel that folds down. You've got hard rubber seals, round rubber seal, edge seal, soft squishy foam that we're going to use on a couple of parts. We'll go over that. Your quick release pins for the wall assembly and for the removable top. Lock assembly, I've got the parts taken apart so we can show it here in a little bit. These are the tie down rails and your wing skins, left skin, right skin. This is the wire cover filler. So if you're running the hard top where your wires come up through, or you roll them over the plastic and down, this helps cover that. And your two floor brackets. So they're not big, but they are steel and they do attach to this. So this is the basics on the kit. For tools, right now a Phillips screwdriver, 7/16 socket. You can get a couple of different kinds. You can get a 7/16 wrench. That will also help in a couple locations just for tightening stuff up. A 10mm wrench, an 8mm wrench, or sockets if you have them that small, and just different kind of ratchets. These are all just hand tools, specialty tools. You don't need anything elaborate or anything. We keep it simple so you can do this yourself. And what we're going to do today is when we do the installation, we're actually going to do this with the hard top on, so you see that you do not have to remove your hard top or your soft top to do the installation. So we'll move the camera around and get set up so you can see more of close-up as we get this started. All right, so here we are at the back end of the Bronco, and what we've done is we've taken off the plastic caps. You only need to take the two off against the back of the seats so you can get access to your D-ring bolts. What we're going to do is we're actually going to pull just the front on both sides. So I'm going to use an impact to pop that and pop this one off. While we're back here also, we're gonna pop these side panels. There are clips on them, so you have to kind of pry them out and pop them. They will come out. This is gonna give you access to these two factory bolt locations that we're gonna use for the main brackets going on. So the right side is longer than the driver's side, but everything is the same in here. A helpful tip is when you're back here, I'm going to take two of these rags, got 3 of them on there, and what you'll see is you'll see a gap from between the body tub and the inner plastic wall. So if you put this down in like this, this will help you. So if you drop the bolt, it's going to go here and not all the way down inside the plastic. So I'm going to do this on both sides just as a nice little precautionary and help, because I learned the hard way doing this the first time of dropping one down, and it was a little difficult. I was able to get it, but you want to eliminate that as you can. So we've got that set up now. So what we're going to do is we're going to move to where these bolts go. So I'm going to grab the 2 floor brackets. So these are kind of small, and what we're going to do is, you see that there is a vertical slot there and a horizontal slot there. The horizontal slot is the top. So we're going to set it right over the D-ring and put the bolt back in. So one of the very final steps you'll find is this is pretty close to not touching the plastic when it goes back on. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to mark it and just take about 1/8 of an inch off your plastic so it still sits nice and tight on here. So we're going to put that bolt in like that, a little bit loose. Come over and do the same thing over here. And this helps prep installing the wall. So that's going to be our next step. So I'll go grab the wall and we'll come back and we'll install that. Okay, so now you're going to grab the lower wall assembly. That's this piece right here. I put a couple of bolts in the bottom holes. You see that there's 2 vertical that go here that are slotted. This is where your wing wall attaches. This is where you attach to the floor brackets that we put in on the D-ring. So I'm going to come in here and just set this in place. This is going to drop down right there. So I'm going to pull that out. Get that one in there. Come over here. I might have to loosen this up and put it back down. This is just to help because it gets kind of tight back here to hold it because it's at an angle where your hand is. Beauty is these are carriage bolts, so the carriage bolt will lock in as you put your nut and washer on. So I'm going to grab now my carriage bolt, or my 1/4 inch nuts and washers, and my 7/16 socket. So I'm going to grab these, a couple of washers, and I'm going to come in here. I'm going to put them right here. And you want to get this, leave it a little bit loose because you want to make sure you've got a good gap that's the same on both sides, left and right. So let me get this one on first over here. I know it's kind of hard to see with my arms in the way, but it goes just like that. 7/16 socket. And you can see that this is gonna pull everything down nice and tight. So we want to get a good gap here. You want this flat on the floor, and that'll go flat as you tighten the floor bracket up. So I've got the same gap on both sides, so I am going to tighten this up on the wall, and then I'll grab the 10mm and tighten up the bracket here. So let me grab that. So with the 10mm in hand, tighten that all the way down, and then move over to this side and do the same thing. And we do have a vertical slot in the 7/16. So if you find that you've got a little bit of gap here, what you're going to want to do is loosen this up and push it down. So I do have a little bit gap on this side, so I'm going to do that right now, because then we can leave that tight as we move on to the next step. Too many moving parts. So I'm gonna get that nice and level down on the floor. Pop it down if you have to, and then tighten it up. Just like that. Okay, so now we want to move on to putting our main brackets in. That's these guys right here. Where there's a bent tab, and this is for the hardtop, where there's a bent tab right here, this is going to go forward towards the front seats. So we've got slotted holes here, are going to line up with the two factory nutserts that are in the body tub. So I'm going to reach up like this so you can still see, and I'm going to come in, I'm going to put this 10 millimeter bolt in, and I'm going to put it just finger tight, so this way we can adjust it when we put the rest of the skins on that it's going to bolt to. So snug just like that, and then we're going to move to this side and do the same. Tab goes forward, it fits right in there. Let me switch arms here. This is where having the rag underneath helps, so in case you drop the bolt, you're not dropping it all the way to the bottom. On the soft top, the bolts are larger, with a larger washer that fits around the soft top mechanism. So we're going to leave those just like that and move to the next frame. So now we're going to put in the small rear brackets that go here. The rear brackets in the normal Slipstream on the Jeeps is called a multi-bend bracket. So we kind of call this the same thing since it's in virtually the same spot. So what you're going to see is you're going to see a bolt hole and then a slotted hole. This is where the soft top mechanism that releases the back corner of your soft top, it actually has an alignment pin. So that little latch mechanism that goes here, that comes down, this will go underneath it, and then you put the factory latch point here. This is where our side frame is going to bolt to from here going forward. So right now we're using a Phillips head bolt. We may change that depending on what we find works best, but all you're going to do is you're going to start it in here like this. Try and line up your alignment pin hole as best you can with the factory hole, and tighten that up to where it sits just like this, nice and sturdy for a solid rear corner. So now I'm going to go over and do the other side. Try and get this to where you can get in close and see it. So you can see the alignment pin. It's a plastic pin for that little mechanism. And we're going to put this, get it started and get it snug up on. So we want to make sure we get that slot pretty much aligned nice with the factory location, and then tighten this all the way down. And that's our rear bracket installed. Okay, so we're going to do a few steps on a table, keep it nice and simple. What we're going to do is we're going to take these are our two wing walls. As you can see, this follows the contour of the plastic wall panels on the inside of the Bronco. This is the passenger side, because this is the oval that goes over. This cutout is the driver's side. What we're going to do is we're going to take the two short frames. These are made out of steel. You're going to take the 1/2-inch foam. This is peel and stick foam out of this bag, and you're going to set it on the flat flange. I've already got it on this set already, so all you're going to do is real simple, just pull it out, stretch it to length, cut it, peel it, stick it. It goes on real easy. We're going to use this in a couple spots, but so once you get them on, what you're going to do is this. We're going to attach to these 3 holes here, not the top one, the next one down, because that's for our horizontal frame. So the way these go is, once you do this, is you want the flat part in, and you want this sitting up, because when this is up like this, this is where your folding removable wall goes into this frame and against the soft foam, so there's no rattling. So what we're going to do is take a couple of carriage bolts, washers and nuts, and we're going to put these on completely tight. So you want the carriage bolt coming in from the front, so it looks like that. You can see that the bolt comes through. You're going to drop a washer on it, and then the nylock nut. These nuts do not need to be torqued down. That's why there's a nylon insert in it. You're going to take your 7/16 and you're just going to tighten this down. Don't get it all the way tight, because you got to align the other 2 holes, but put one in the middle, drop a washer, put a nut, 7/16. And then do the bottom hole. Washer, nut. It's a lot of bolts that puts this together, but each piece has a specific purpose, and this is what creates the structure that nobody else has in the industry. This allows for a folding removable top and a folding removable wall, and the ability to add accessories down the road. So you can tighten, once you got all 3 in, tighten them all the way up. So that's a completed one, so it sits just like this. These are your quick release pinholes that match up on the wall. So now you do the same thing. You take this one, put it over. Doesn't matter what order you put the bolts in. Just make sure you get them all in. You can set it on a table, and that'll hold the carriage bolt in place also. For those that don't know the carriage bolt, why we're using carriage bolts, that's why we have all these square holes. This allows the bolt to lock into place, and it won't spin on you. And from the outside, you can't get a wrench on it from the outside, so nobody can take it apart. Need one more washer. So now your wing walls are ready to be installed. So while we're also here, let's do the same thing, same basic steps to your long side frames. You'll see that there's a notch right here. This is what goes up against the wall. This is the tailgate end down here, the short end, the long end, the gap. This allows for the folding top to sit up in it or be able to drop down if you need to from the front side. So what we do here, and I've already got them on, but what we have is we have these hard rubber strips. And these are cut to length already. All you do is pull them out, peel them, stick them, and set them on. Cut the excess off the ends. And the reason why we use the hard rubber on this is so when the top sits on it, the top will eventually, if you start putting things on top of it, will take that soft foam and it will compress. And then you start getting gaps where you can hear your pins moving a little bit. So a way to adjust for that is we went to the hard rubber on the horizontal frames. I'll put them over here. And then if you find that when you put your pins in, if you want them tighter, if you have a little bit of movement, a couple of things that you can do. These are the pins right here. They're going to go in here, and we oversize the holes on purpose so that you've got the ability of slight deviations in the metal bending and the holes lining up allows for this. But when the top goes down, if you find that it's a little bit loose, you can take a piece of squishy foam and put it on top of the hard rubber. You can do the whole end if you need to, if all three pins are a little loose, or just where the ones are. Because once that top sits on it, it's going to compress and be nice and solid. So now that we've got the hard rubber strips on the horizontal side frames, we're going to go ahead and install them in the vehicle right now. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to install the wing walls. Grab your 7/16 socket, 4 bolts, nuts, and washers, both wing walls. And what we're going to do is we're going to install these. I'm going to put them on the back side of the wall right here. That's why I got my bolts started, just sitting in place right now, so I can line them up with this. It's totally up to you. If you want to put them on the front side here, you can. Just makes it a little bit harder to get the bolts in. It's totally up to you, whichever way you want to do it. If you want a clean look with them being on the back side, or if you want them on the front side, you can go either way, it doesn't matter. But what we're going to do is I'm going to hold this with my fingers, and I'm going to push this kind of in place, line it up with the bolts, top and bottom, and I'm going to put a nut and a washer on them from the back side here. I'll move my hand in just a second. You can see it once I get these started. So I've got them started right there. So we'll move the camera around so you can actually see them, just like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tighten these up. I'm not going to tighten them all the way up because, as you can see, that we use slotted holes. So this way, if you need to add gap, you can do this. So I'm just going to go ahead and get these to about 3/4 tight, just so I can move it if I need to. And what we're also doing is we're also making sure that we give you enough edge seal, so that if you want to put an edge seal right here, you can. So with the bolts like that, I'm going to move over to the other side. Okay, so now we're on the driver's side putting the wing wall in. You can see that 2 bolts are coming through right here, and I'm just going to put a washer and a nut on each one of them, and then tighten them about 3/4 of the way, because we want to make sure that we've got good gaps when we put the center wall panel on. So grab my 7/16. Sorry if I hit the camera jostling around. this, you can see that we've got a little bit of movement, and that's so we can get the right angle all the way up here when we put the wall in for a good gap. So we're going to leave it just like that. Okay, so now we're going to put our side frames on. Like I said, you're going to have the gap going towards the front of the Bronco. It's going to go right into this slot in the wing wall and have a bolt put in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wiggle my way up in here. This is where it just takes a little bit of time. I'm going to put a bolt through there and bring it in so it kind of holds it in place, so I can get a nut and a washer up under here. This is where it helps having small hands. I'm going to put the washer and the nut, and I'm just going to get it started because that will hold it in place. If you got somebody else that can help hold that, makes it great. Spin it with my finger so it's on there, and I'm going to come up and I'm going to do this part here the same way. So you can see, if you look underneath, you can see where the bolt and the nut will go on, just like this. And we can tighten these all the way up once we get it in place. You'll see that this sits down a little bit. We want it to be flush with the bracket, so when the skin sits on it, it's nice and flush. So I'm going to hold that, kind of two-finger hold it, and I'm going to tighten this one up. You can always loosen it and tighten it to get it completely aligned as you need it. So I can see what I'm doing, get it right at it. And I'm going to go all the way snug, and if I look at it, I'm pretty much right on it. Turns a little bit, but that's okay. So that's snug right there, and you can adjust that too when you put the skin on it. If it seems like the skin is sitting a little bit higher than the bracket we want it to sit on it, just loosen this one a little bit to drop it down. And then the same thing with this. You want it to be all the way up and tight. The skin's gonna sit over. This will create a little bit of gap on the skin, but this is where we have the rigidity of everything bolting together to create the structure. And you don't want to have it sitting out there, so if you can pull it all the way in so it's nice and flat right here, that makes it to where it doesn't interfere with the folding wall. So I'm lifting it up so it takes away any gap right there. So pull it up and tighten it all the way up. Just like that. And you can see that this is pretty much in line. There's a gap right here on your wing wall. That's specifically for the soft top. It has to have that because the mechanism has got a pivot point right here. That's why there's a cutout in this, and that's why we did a little 90-degree bend on the hardtop bracket to help take up most of that. So now I'm going to move over to this side, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to actually put this one in, just kind of have it sit there into sitting on the metal. That kind of helps, just so I can get this on and started. And a little trick when you're doing this, if you can just get your hands on it to hold the bolt or the nut and washer onto the bolt, you can actually pull the bolt out a little bit and spin the bolt by your hand because of the square cutout that fits in the bracket, pull the bolt back a little bit, and you can spin it, and then you can push it in and it'll hold into the square slot. Just a little trick of doing a lot of these. So we're going to do the same thing, and I'll show you that same trick because it'll be easier to see on this end where you see the end of the bolt. So the bolt goes in there. I'm going to get the nut and the washer just up on the bolt, put it up against it if I don't drop my washer. Up on the end of it, I can feel it, so I'm going to pull the bolt back and I can spin the bolt till it gets a little snug into the nylock washer or a nylock nut. So then I'm just going to take this, hold the bolt, push this up and tighten this all the way up. Just like that. And then I'm going to come down here and do that same thing with making sure that this is sitting up there all the way. Like I said, we make the holes a little bit bigger so that you can have some adjustability. So when you get to this point, you want it flush here and flush here so it doesn't stick out and grab anything. So it's going to go down just a little bit, maybe a little too much. And you can see that's flush across there and flush there, and that's all the way tight. So this is pretty much in place. You can still adjust it down here at the bottom because of the slot. So when we put the wall in, we'll see how our gaps are here. And then where this comes across, this will be held in place with the skin sitting on it, 2 bolts going down through the main bracket and through the top of the side frame. That holds the structure in place when we tighten the 2 bolts up under here and do that on both sides. So that's kind of what we're moving towards next. Okay, so now we're going to work on putting the skins in place. This is what's going to cover most of the gap. This is what's nice about our system is it leaves everything in the back end of the Bronco open. We have to come out this far with the side frames because of the mechanism for the soft top. So we want this to work with both of them. Unfortunately, this gap right here will not allow your front doors to sit back here in the bags like Ford designed it. Pretty much my preference is if I'm pulling the doors off, I'm not putting them in the back of the vehicle to bounce around. So that's just me. So to go to the skins, you'll see that there's a left and a right piece of grass. This cutout is for the wire cover for where your wire loom and your washer tube come up. We want to be able to have the ability to fold that under and connect to the factory point right there. So when you're running a soft top, the wiring is already there for a hard top. It's going to be able to sit in here and not be pinched or anything with the skins. So this is the driver side. This is the passenger side. And what this is going to do is this is going to sit right in here. It's going to go under the body tub a little bit. So you can see that this is really nice at closing this up. All these holes line up with these side frames. The other thing is the tie down rails. So these tie down rails start at the front, this bolt right here, then all the way down to the roll bar. This goes in just like this. You want the vertical closer to the roll bar, and you're going to put bolts down in here and also in this front spot. This connects the wing wall to the wing skin as a pinch point, so that holds it tight. And then 2 bolts will go in this way to your lower bracket. So I'm going to just set these in place. We're going to do this on this side now, the driver's side. You'll see that it sits right on top of the frame here in the back. And we're going to line this up so that all I have to do now is go grab bolts, come back, and that'll be the next thing with dropping the bolts all in place. Okay, so now that we got the skins down, all lined up, I dropped 2 holes in my underneath bracket. I put a bolt here at the pinch point in the wing wall. And then what I want to do is I want to set the tie down in place, and I'm going to drop a bolt in all of their holes. These are all slotted underneath in the frame, so this way you get a little bit of adjustability. And by doing that, now it's nut and washer on each one. And you might find that as you're doing it for alignment, you might have to pull the wall back a little bit to get that one in easier. It's okay. We want it as a tight fit. So I'm just getting them all started right now because I don't want to go more than 3/4 of the way tight. These 2 bolts here leave about halfway tight. This way they're adjustable to pull up, so when you go to put your plastic wall panel, factory wall panels back on, you can. So what I've already done is, if you look underneath, I've tightened up these 2 bolts right here, the factory bolts. Now that I know the skin fits on it and it's in place, I tightened both bolts up. Those are the 10mm bolts, all the way tight. So now I'm just putting a nut and a washer on these bolts just to keep them, everything lined up and in place, and we'll tighten them up shortly. So let me go through and put these on, and we want to leave everything loose so that when we put the folding top in place, if we need to adjust the sides, there's not a lot of adjustability because we want it as tight a fit as possible. Everybody asks about, hey, is this thing waterproof? It's not made to be waterproof because it's got gaps where it needs to go around the roll bar, where the folding top needs to sit in a frame. So it's not waterproof, but it's pretty water resistant for the most part. There's probably something from Ford or somebody else that's coming out that does a tonneau cover for the top of it. So if you want to be completely waterproof, you can. Just remember that if you're asking if it's waterproof, your top is completely off and the rest of the Bronco is not waterproof. So just keep that in mind too. So I'm in a good position where the skin is sitting perfectly on top of this bracket. So I am going to switch. If you look right here, it's nice and smooth there and perfectly on top there. I'm going to start snugging, not all the way. Remember I said about 3/4 of the way. This is where it just takes a little bit of time because there's so many bolts holding everything together. You can start feeling it getting to the snug part, and that's when you kind of just slow down and leave it for the final bit. It's not that there's a lot of movement, but it's a little bit. I'm going to take the extension off for under here for this one. Push down to hold the carriage bolt in its square cutout until the bolt tightens it down. This one you can tighten all the way. But I'm going to leave it a little loose. So these are loose here. That's for final, because when you go to put the plastic panel in, you might want to have to pull those bolts up so you can push the factory cover panel back on. I need some more bolts. Let me grab them. Okay, so it's a little darker because we lost one of our LED lights. So hopefully you can still see everything the same. I've got the pinch bolt in, the 2 underneath bracket bolts in place. There's no nut or washer on them yet. And the back corner on the frame. So I'm flush on the back, flush on the side. And now we want to put our tie down rail with these 4 bolts right here. So they're just going to drop into place. Like I said, the frame is slotted, so if you need to move the skin, move the skin, the tie down, you've got the ability to move it. So I'm going to start putting these on, put them to where they go, start catching the nut lock inside the nut, and that'll hold it from spinning. I'm going to reach over past this light to get the front one. Hold it down with your thumb. That keeps the bolt from spinning while it's there, and I've got the extension off. I'm going to tighten this down about 3/4 of the way. The beauty of 3/4 inch long bolts is sometimes a lot of spinning. Just work your way down the line, putting each one in. And it might be easier to go like this. Switch it up, left hand, right hand, whatever works. It does get tight on the back one because you've also got the bolt coming in from the bracket. So that one you might have to hold your head to the side, shrug your shoulders, do whatever to get that one started, but that's good. Then I'll do the 2 underneath. Like I did on the other side, I did tighten up my 2 main body bolts so that way it's tight underneath, tight to the body, and that way it holds our skins where they need to. So I'm gonna tighten these up about half on these, so that way when I go to put my plastic panel back in, if I need to move these, I can. Three-quarters of the way snug, just so we've got a little bit of adjustability. You can see it and feel it starting to snug down, and that's when you kind of stop. Okay, now we're going to leave this like it is right now, and we're going to move back to the table and put our wall assembly and our tops together. Okay, so now we're back at the table putting together a few components. This is going to be your center wall panel. This is where your bottom hinges go. So what we're going to do is, the first thing is we are going to start with the peel and stick 3M squishy foam. And what I like to do is, since I've got the known edge right here is I want to go from inside edge to inside edge and cut that with the scissors. And I want to go right along the edge of the opening. Use your finger as a guide. And put that all the way down. Because this is where the access panel is going to close on it, and it will keep it from making noise. And then we're going to do the same thing with the side. So with this being here at the top, I'm going to line that up, hold it, come all the way down here to the end, pinch it so I know where my mark is. Start here at the top and kind of follow the edge. This way it's not sticking out. And right down to the bottom edge. And do that then on the other side. Helps if when you go to peel this, squeeze the corner and it'll pop the peel part off. So again, I'm going to set it up against the one at the top and then just kind of use my thumb as a guide all the way down to the edge. So now we're going to take the access panel while it's off, and this is the cylinder head. I've taken the lock assembly apart. These are all the parts. That's the cam lever, lock nut, and O-ring, and you can tell that this cylinder goes in. Doesn't matter what side you put it in. There's a rubber gasket that will stay between the cylinder and the panel itself. Okay, this is a steel panel. It's got a lot of weight to it. Right now we're still using steel on it for the strength. This is going to be a tight fit, so if you find that you can't push it through with your hand, it's okay. It's that way for a reason, because we don't want it spinning. So if you put it on the edge of the table, you can actually take a rubber mallet and hit it to push it through. You will not hurt the threads on the backside. We've done this for 4 years. Haven't had one ruined yet. So then you take your lock nut and you're just going to spin it on and just make it finger tight for right now. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take the lock assembly, looking for a key. So we've got the key for it. And what we're going to do is we're going to flip it over. And we're going to drop the lock assembly in just like that. I like to do it where the key is straight up and down. So what you want to do is you want to test it and make sure it does spin. If you find that the position that you drop it in, it doesn't spin, there's a lock out for the lock cylinder. It means you just pull it out, spin it 90 degrees, one turn, drop it back in. So I'm going to leave this one like this. That means I want my lever, my cam lever, straight up and down. So I'm going to hold that like this. Keep your finger on the back side. And what you're going to do is you're going to make sure you drop this O-ring down in there. That O-ring needs to be in there. Okay? It will try and come out. It's okay. It will squish down in. What you want to do then is you want your cam lever to sit on it like this, where it's closer to the access panel, not this way. That's too high. You want it just like this. And you can feel that O-ring go down in the cylinder as you put that in place. So you're going to grab this and spin that on. I'm going to grab my Phillips. And it's just snug like that. So now your lock cylinder is in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test it again. Nice and smooth. Make sure this is tight underneath. You don't have to tighten it down too tight. If you find that after you get to this point and it's barely moving, loosen your nut up a little bit. It squeezes the cylinder. So all I'm doing is this, so that's a good fitment, okay? So I'm gonna set this to the side. I'm gonna grab this magnet, okay? This magnet goes on the back side right here at the top. So if this is the hinge bottom, this is the inside of the wall, I want to have it about dead center. What this is we use the magnet as a backing plate for the cam lever as it comes up. So it's not scraping against the metal and peeling the powder coat off. It's on the hard magnet. So I just want to set this right into place, about dead center, and even with the bottom here. And just put it just like that. You're done with that step. So now the next thing is putting the hinges on. So I'm going to flip it back over so you can see this. This is where we take the access panel spacer bar, and it's going to sit right here. It's as thick as the top itself. I'm going to spin the lock so I can actually set this, line it up just like that, and then take my small hinges and drop them into place. Just like that. Now the nuts and the washers on the back side, it's a little tight, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over, take the key out, so I'm not sitting up. Kind of hold it in place as you fold it over on the table. Nice thing is you can use all this packing that we use to hold everything and protect it as it's going down. And if it comes out, you can just move everything to where it lines up. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take the small nuts and washers and put them on. These are the 8mm wrench size or socket. So I'm going to put these on. Make sure that you can spin these at least one turn before it gets a little bit tight by hand. That means you're not off on getting the threads. You're not cross threading the nuts onto the hinge posts. So go backwards with it, so counterclockwise to put it on the post, the hinge post. Go counterclockwise till you feel like you can set it on there nice and flat, and you should be able to spin it almost one full turn before you start seeing the threads come up through the nut. That means you're not cross threading it. If it's tight right from the start, back it off, start it again. So with the thickness, we're able to put a washer on the access panel itself, but it's a little bit thicker on the spacer bar to get that through. So you might not be able to put a washer in. You can, and the nylock nut will hold it, but if you want to see threads come past the nuts, you won't be, it's flush with the washers and the nuts on the spacer sides, on the spacer bar side, because we're going through the added thickness of the wall panel itself. So I've got them just started. You do not tighten these over tight because you can snap the post off. For those that do, that think that they have to torque it, you don't have to. If you accidentally do that, we do have replacement hinges on the website. So if you need to, you can get them. Oops, wrong size. Stay with the small guys. So I'm going to set these right here. I'm going to lift this up, and I'm going to have to hold it by hand. So I'm going to start one. I'm going to put the washer on this one so you can see it. I know it's kind of hard to see, but you can see that the nut is spinning and it goes on. I'm not going to tighten it all the way down. If you've got just a regular wrench, it's just, you know, turn it by hand till you get it all the way. So now I've got to realign this to get the post holes to come up through, so you can see them come up through. I've got my hand under the backside on the hinge, so that's holding it up. And I'm going to drop a washer, put a nut. Like I said, go backwards first to make it drop down on the post perfectly. I'm going to do the same thing with the other ones. Once you get them all started, then you can tighten them down. Okay? Like I said, they go on easy, but if you find that it's not going on, it means you're cross-threading the nut. So back it off and start again till you've got it where it starts on flat. And you can spin it basically with one finger. So like you can see right here, I can spin it with one finger. I'll bring it back a little bit, and you can see that I'm spinning it, and then it gets a little tight. Then I go back in with my wrench, get it to where it's snug so it holds it so it doesn't spin. And once you get it, you know, that tight right there, you're good. Don't go any tighter than that because you will snap it off. This is even true for the big hinges we're going to do on the folding top. You don't have to torque these down. What's holding everything tight is the nylon or the nylon insert inside the nylock nut. And this is a little bit easier if you got a wrench like I've got a ratcheting dog bone. It's not hitting on that. But you can see the threads come up to about even with the nut if you use the washer on the spacer bar side. And you can see plenty of threads for just the access panel itself. It's because of the added thickness of the spacer bar and the wall itself. So if you want more threads showing, take the nuts back off and just take the washer off. So now you can see that this goes here. You can see where this lines up with the magnet. What I'll do is I'll grab the key and just lift this up. And see how it's a little snug? That's good because it's the thickness of the squishy foam. So if you grab it and squeeze it there, it makes that spin up nice and tight. So that keeps your access panel really tight and protected. So now we'll move on to the next stuff. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take our wall assembly and put it up into place. So one of the things that we're gonna do is we're gonna grab 2 pins to put them in the bottom location. That's right here and here, so that we can see our gaps. We want about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch gap. One thing I do as a little trick that helps is take a piece of cardboard and cut you some shims. So if it's tight, you want to be able to move everything to where you can get the shim in between the wall and the wing wall section right there with the vertical frame. So I'm going to climb in. We'll show the other side too here in just a second, but I'm going to show you how this wall goes in. I won't use the shims unless I need to. So if you want, you can pull this like this into place so you're not trying to fight it, and then you just want to line your hole up and slide the pin in just like that. Lift this up and that pin's in place. So now as we back up, we can do this, and there's good gap on both sides. So I've got pretty good right there, and the same on this side. So that's perfect for our wall. So this is where what you can do is you can tighten up these bolts down here, so you can look and you can see you've got about 1/8 of an inch gap down here, which is perfect. Put a shim in there, put a shim in on this side just to hold it. Try and get it, the pin's kind of pushing it out. But once you get that in like that, you've got good spacing. And then check the top. And it's good, as long as it's not hitting, it's perfect. And you can see that this is sitting tight up against the soft foam that's on the vertical frame. So now what we'll do is we'll move the camera on the back side so you can actually see how the pins go in. Okay, so you can see where the pin goes through the folding wall and through the bracket, the vertical bracket. You can see where I've got my cardboard shim. All I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this up just like that. I'm going to check and make sure I've got good position here. I'm going to grab 2 more pins real quick, and I'll jump back in. Then we're going to put the top pins in so you can see where they go. So I'm going to open my pins up. So as I pull this up, I'm going to align this right like that and push that pin in. If you want, you can actually lock it into place. That means the wire goes over the end and that holds it. So I'm going to put a piece of cardboard in right here just to make sure that we've got the same gap left and right. So with this one in place, I'm going to do the same thing and put the wire over it. And since it's good gap top and bottom, I'm going to tighten these 2 bolts all the way up. So that way my wall stays in the same position. Remember, we had tightened these 3 up already on the vertical, so they're all good. So now we're going to rotate the camera to the other side. I'll move the light. So you can see you got good gap here of the wall, so it's not hitting it. So I'm going to put this pin, pull this out just a little bit, stretch the wire over it, and that's what's holding it. I'm going to make sure I got a good gap here. It's not metal on metal, so that's a good thing. I'm going to take the other pin and I'm going to put it in. Now if you find that as you're pulling the wall up that it's really tight to get this pin in, that's okay. It's just the soft foam is at its full thickness. It hasn't compressed yet. So once you get the pin in, put the wire over it just like that. And with your good gaps, you're going to tighten these last bolts up right here on your wall nice and snug. So that's your wall assembly right there, nice and snug. But what's really cool is it sets us apart from everybody else. You can pull the top pins just pop the wire off the end, pull the pin, lay your seats down, lay your rug on. Now you've got full use of the back end. If you want to sleep in it or carry more stuff and you want to take the wall out, you just pull the 2 bottom pins. It's that easy. In 60 seconds, you've got full access with your wall out of the way. Okay, so now we're going to put the folding top together. These are going to be the 3 main parts. Large top, which goes towards the front of the vehicle, small panel, and tail skin. The tail skin is what fits into the tailgate groove when everything's closed up. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the large hinges and just set them in place. Actually, it'll be easier on the big one first. Set them in place, and what we're going to do is we're going to take the small top and set it just like that. And this is where you're going to take the M8 nuts and washers, which uses the 10 millimeter socket. Again, you should be able to spin these on by hand without tightening them all the way down, or cross-threading them if they don't spin that easy to start. And we're going to leave these loose until we get to inside. We're going to tighten them up, but about 3/4 of the way. But we're going to leave them loose for final adjustment once we put it in the back of the vehicle, into the frame system, and put the pins in so it all lines up. So I'm going to take my 10 millimeter socket and tighten these. You can see how much this moves. These hinges have slots, so you can adjust it. So I'm going to get about 2/3 of the way. Just like that. Come over this side. And if you notice all these little holes in the top or in the underside of the panel, these are actually for the molly panel rivets. So if you want to add them down the road, you can. It's all pre-drilled, all line up. So, of course that came out. So let's move this, grab this. Oh, that's the rear one. There it is. So set it on just like that. And if you have extra nuts and washers, again, it's not because you forgot something. We put extra in. So on the hinges, both sets, we try and send 10 nuts and washers. You only need 8 for either the small hinges or the large hinges. So, see how this one's being a little bit tight to get that. We'll double check that in just a second here. Drop that on. Should be able to spin it freely. I'm going to double check this one back here because it didn't feel like it spun on easy. So, this one, make sure. Oh, there's actually a burr on that hinge. So that's a defect. So now I've got to pull that one off. I'll do that one in a second. Let me get this all the way tight and I will swap that out. So if you see something like that, just reach out to us and we'll send you a replacement. So I'm going to pull these off. I'm going to see if I've got another hinge handy dandy behind me. See how you can see that those adjust. Get the washer off. That's why that nut was not going on. Let me see here if these are my large hinges. Yep. Nope, that's some small ones. Nope, those are pins. Here we go. Replacement hinge. So now what I've got to do is I've got to flip this back over, pull these off. I'm going to take that, set that there, put that down in, drop that in. See how they spin? You can see the threads come up to the bottom of the nut. That means you've got it threaded properly and not cross-threaded. Flip it so I can get these two nuts and washers on. See how it goes on full spin with the fingers only. And like I said, leave them loose because we'll do the final adjustment after we get the pins in the frame. So now, one of the last things that we're going to do is we're going to do this all so it's easy to see right here. So the folding top, on the back of it, this is how the tail skin goes. We call this upside down, because it needs to be lower than the tailgate so that your soft top crossbar and your glass from your hard top come down nice and tight where it's supposed to from the factory. So these three holes are all going to line up right here. So we're going to just put this up against it. We're going to take 3 bolts, put them in, see if I can do this. Usually I do this on the vehicle, but let's see if I can do this and keep all the bolts in place. So I'm going to spin this up. I'm going to hold it. So this is where I'm going to grab my 7/16 nuts, which are the 1/4 inch nuts and washers, and I am going to start these bolts. If you want to put it flat, you can. Get it started by hand. Take this, do this one. Like I said, if you want to pull the bolt up out of the hole and spin it by hand, that sometimes helps if it's hard for you to reach in here and do it from this side. So I can get this one. So short arms usually don't have much range, but I can get it. Okay, So you can see how this adjusts top and bottom. This is so you can adjust it on the height of the tailgate. What I like to do is I like to start by pushing it all the way up, so you get a little bit of a lip sitting up above the flat part on the folding top, and I'm going to tighten this one all the way down in this position. Make sure it's all the way up. I'm going to come to the end and do the same thing on this end. I'm going to push it all the way up so you can see how you've got it tail skin all the way pushed up. Leaves you the gap at the top. Hard when you're right-handed and you're doing it left-handed. So I'm going to switch for this guy. So again, if you see, you got a little bit of a ridge standing flush with the top. That means it's all the way up. That's a good thing. So one of the other things that we're going to do while it's out, I'm going to flip this up. And what we're going to do is we have what we call a gap seal. That is the guy with the red peel, and this is going to go on the front edge, so it's the furthest one from the tail skin, front edge of the large top. We're going to peel it and stick it to the top, and this fills the gap created at the wall, so you've got the ability to fold the top so they don't hit each other. So we keep a gap there. It's about a 1/2 inch gap, 3/8. This way we can just fill it with this, and it makes a nice finish too. And you want to put this on the front edge of the folding top instead of the wall, because if you fold your wall down and this seal would be sticking up, anything that you slide in will tear the seal. So this is why we put it specifically on the top. And you want to make sure that you're not further down than this lip right here. So if I can actually hold this right here, I'm going to come around the back of the table, and I'm going to set it right there, and I'm going to kind of just feel my way, try and keep it as close to the bottom as possible, but not too much down at the bottom. And you just want to fill that gap. So it's a little bit less than this part right here. So it sits down, and this way when the wall comes up, it will actually squeeze that when it's all tight. So now we're going to reposition the camera, and I'm going to show you how this goes in. Okay, so now we're going to put the folding top into place. I've lowered the wall down so it's easier for you to see the pinhole locations and how the top goes in without the wall being in the way. So we'll do this view first, then we'll show you from the back. So I'm going to grab the top. I'm going to bring it in, and I am going to set it down into place. One thing that you'll notice with the Bronco is these speakers are great, but they're also in the way of the folding top because they take away the ability to fold it completely in one motion. So we're gonna come and do this to slide it into place. So once it's like this, what we want to do is we want to put pins in the 4 corners, 2 front, 2 rear. So I'm going to look from underneath, and I'm looking for where my hole is. So I've got to pull this back. This is where you see the hole there. We'll line up with that. So I'm just going to take a pin and I'm going to push it in. I'm going to do it on the other side too. So we got to come back a little bit. So it goes in, just put it in loose. If you want, you can do the 2 middle ones. This way you know you get all your holes lined up. And then same thing with here. There's multiple holes in these frames because we also use this same frame for the Jeep. It helps with, you know, saving some cost using the same parts. So with this in place like this, I can pull the 2 tops together and then I can tighten up the hinge bolts, and I'm going to do that right now. So just by reaching underneath, I've got good gaps on both sides, really good gaps. It's tight on the driver's side, but you've got about a 1/4 inch. That means we can shift that over, meaning we can shift the top over because it will sit loosely in there. So we've got the same gap on both sides. And like I said, I'm going to reach from underneath. If you look at the top at that seal, as I pull the wall up, it will squeeze that rubber seal. And you just put the pin back in from the inside. And this is basically the whole enclosure. We still got a few more steps, but you can see how this all can come apart, the folding top and the folding wall, out in about 60 seconds, and you still have the full use of your entire back end of your Bronco. That's the beauty of a Slipstream. Okay, so now that we've got the folding top in, you can see that we've got probably a 1/4 inch gap on both sides. That's good. It's better to have a little bit more gap than metal on metal because that's going to scratch the powder coat and everything. It gives a little bit of play, so if there's any, you know, deviations from factory on body size, because this is all laser cut parts, we found that that was kind of an issue with Jeep. I mean, an 1/8 of an inch, you know, made a huge difference. So we wanted to make sure that we had enough gap so the top is nice and secure. But the other thing is, you can see that with the pins in, you can't move this. There's no rattle. This is the tail skin and where it's going to fit into the groove, the upper groove in your tailgate. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this edge seal. Let me grab my scissors. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this on the edge. This is to protect your tailgate when it closes. Like I said, this is also, the tail skin is all the way up. If it dropped on you before you close your tailgate, make sure you loosen the bolts and push this all the way up like this, so you can feel the edge right at the top of your folding top. So we're going to put this edge seal on here. We're going to cut off the excess. Perfect. First thing we're going to do is we're going to check the hard top glass will come down, and you can see that it's snug right under it. It might pop the edge seal off now and then. If you want, you can glue that in, but you want this to be snug, so it's snug when everything's closed. So if the seal wasn't there, it'd be about 1/8 of an inch clearance. So we're gonna raise this up, and now we're gonna check the fitment of the tailgate. We wanna make sure there's no hitting when the tailgate closes onto the edge here. So as I close this, you'll see that it goes past that rubber block on the corner. You want to be able to look down this line and make sure that it's staying above everything. And you can see that, you know, I can still lift it. It's not hitting it. And I can close it, and I can still move it a little bit. This lets you know that if you forget to put your pins in, you can't lift it up past the tailgate because it's sitting in that groove, nice and snug. The other thing that's nice about that is from here you can see this gap right here. So this gap is here for a reason. On the soft top, when that comes down and you can lock it into place with that lock mechanism, that will sit right here for the hook, and then your actual mechanical hook comes down and hooks onto that, will actually sit perfectly on the top of the folding top. So you can still reach up underneath and pop that on both ends and lift your soft top to that hinge point, and your hinge bar will come down and sit in its normal position right there. And when that's also closed, the way that prop rod sits just above, about 1/8 of an inch clearance, not much, but perfectly over the tail skin. So even if you're running side panels off, rear panel off, but you still have the soft top mechanism down and locked into place, and the tailgate closed, you're not getting in the back end of this. So one of the last things that we have, these are only for if you want to close off this gap. So, you know, somebody might be able to get their hand down in here and get the pin. So what we did is we made these end panels to go right here. So this will close that off. So let me grab my 7/16 and I'm gonna pull this bolt out. These won't work with the soft top because the soft top mechanism is in the way. And with that soft top rear crossbar sitting there, it's covering this whole area anyways. But if you see what we did a really nice fitment. Drop the washer and the nut. So this will go over and drop into place, and it's an added tail skin, and it comes just past your plastic opening for the soft top. So we're gonna go ahead and put this on. And we're going to make sure that it clears this rubber block when it's all said and done and closing. So, because we're trying to take up as much gaps as we can without any interference. So, let's get that about right there. So you got about the same gap right here. This might sit a little bit higher, that's okay. It's about 1/16 of an inch. So what we're gonna do is check it. I'm gonna take another piece of edge seal. Let me cut that. So that fits on. So now we're gonna go back to close this. It goes right over that rubber seal and fits in perfect. So now we're going to do is we're going to come over and we're going to do the one on this side, and then do final tweaks and everything just to lock everything up. Okay, so now that we've got everything in, go ahead and tighten up all your bolts. Everywhere that you left a loose one, double check them all. Make sure all the 1/4 inch carriage bolts are tight. One of the last things is this is our wire cover. It's got a PEM stud in it, so it's nice and smooth on the top. That's specifically to go right here. So let me grab another light just to help out. So you can see this hole right here. You can see what Ford did is they made the wires come up inside this plastic piece, so they're really not in the way now, but when you go, if you're running a soft top, you're going to come over this plastic piece. So what we want to do is we want to protect that. So what we're going to do is we are going to drop this guy into place, and that just covers that gap. So if you're running a soft top, these are going to come over the plastic and right down through here where you've got the gap. And that's when we're just going to put a bolt nut on the bottom, or nut and washer on the bottom end of it, and be done with it.